They called it the stillness. That moment when the air no longer moved and even the wind outside seemed to forget how to whisper. It happened just once in the small town of Blackridge, but it changed everything. The town's history will always have a scar where that date used to be. November 13th, 1997. That's when the children vanished. The school bell rang at 2:30 p.m. like it always did. Mrs. Calder's third-grade class was in the middle of story time. The chalkboard still held half of the word balloon. Crayons rolled on the desks. Juice boxes were mid-sip. 18 children sat in that classroom. When the principal opened the door only minutes later, 17 of them were gone. Gone, not missing, not escaped, gone. No noise, no screaming. Just one child remained, a boy named Ellis Mercer. He was sitting perfectly still in the corner of the room, holding a pair of scissors in his left hand, even though he was right-handed. His face was blank, not frightened, not tearful, just quiet. The teacher was gone too. By the time emergency services arrived, Ellis hadn't moved. He wouldn't speak for days. And when he did, the first thing he said was whispered into the ear of a nurse at Blackridge General. The bell rang twice. That was the first anomaly. No one heard a second bell. No one in the school. No one on the block. No one but him. But when they reviewed the security footage, grainy, flickering black and white from a hallway camera, you could see the bell's rope moving twice. It didn't make sense. There hadn't been a rope bell in that building since 1979. The parents, the town, even the authorities began to panic. Doors were nailed shut, locks were changed, churches held daily vigils. The FBI set up base in the gymnasium. Reporters swarmed like flies, but nothing made it out of town that wasn't cleared first. Someone, maybe higher than the FBI, wanted it quiet. All interviews with Ellis Mercer were redacted. Even to this day, you can file for them under FOIA, and all you'll get is 26 pages of black bars. The town never reopened Blackridge Elementary. They called it a failed structure, declared it condemned. But the building still stands, rotten, silent, sagging under its own secrets. Graffiti covers the outside, but no one dares mark the inside. It's as if something inside the walls still watches. People said Ellis wasn't right after that. His parents moved him 3 states over, tried to give him a normal life. But he wouldn't stop drawing them. The other kids, always 17 stick figures, all with hollow eyes and mouths sewn shut with red ink. In every one, there was a black shape in the corner, a crooked bell tower that didn't exist in real life, not on the school's blueprint, not in any photo, not even in old architectural records. But Ellis remembered it. Years passed, and no evidence was ever found. The desks were still there, backpacks, jackets, half-eaten snacks, but not a single thread of the missing children remained. It was as if the earth swallowed them without a sound. No prints, no scents for dogs, no trace at all. Then came the second anomaly. 7 years later to the day, November 13th, 2004, a teenager trespassing in the ruins of Blackridge Elementary went missing. Her name was Jamie Lynn Grove, age 16. She and her friend dared each other to spend the night in the old music room. At exactly 2:30 a.m., Jamie disappeared while her friend was in the hallway. Gone, in less than a minute. The only thing left was her phone. It had recorded 1 second of audio. A bell, not a school bell, not digital. Something older. Something warped. That sound file was passed around the internet years later under different names. The hollowbell.wav, Blackridge tone, even God's warning.mp3. No matter what you called it, those who listened to it long enough said the same thing. They started dreaming about hallways, and missing children, and 17 blank faces. The police tried to write off Jamie's disappearance as another runaway, but her friend was never the same. He eventually disappeared too. Not physically, he was found, but mentally. Institutionalized at age 18, he began carving bells into his skin, 17 on his left arm, one larger one across his back. He kept whispering the same phrase. They didn't go anywhere. They're just under. What that meant, no one knew. But when investigators returned to the school to examine the floorboards, they found something chilling. In the dust beneath the classroom desks, 17 small handprints were etched into the wood, each one spaced perfectly, as if the children had been lined up in a circle. Ellis Mercer, the only survivor, vanished from public record in 2008. No forwarding address, no job history, no death certificate. His social security number was listed as inactive. But a note surfaced in a rural Pennsylvania library, a scribbled journal page left inside a hollowed-out children's book. It simply said, "The bell doesn't call children, it collects them." And on the back of that note was a name that had never appeared in public files before. A teacher's name. Calder wasn't her real name. To this day, people say the Blackridge case was a mass hallucination. Others say it was a cult event, a ritual sacrifice, or a time-fold incident, a term coined by fringe theorists who believe the classroom was pulled into another temporal layer, a wrinkle in reality. But the question remains, how did one child stay behind? How did Ellis Mercer survive? And what did he see when the bell rang twice? The days following Jamie Lynn Grove's disappearance were quiet in Blackridge, but not peaceful. Something settled into the air after that night, an invisible pressure that clung to the town like mold in forgotten walls. People stopped speaking of the school aloud. Kids whispered about it at sleepovers, then pretended they didn't. Grown men avoided the road that passed behind it. Even dogs stopped barking when they neared the rusted gate. The building itself hadn't changed, yet it looked older, like it aged out of sync with the world. Windows seemed darker than before. The once white bricks along the back wall faded to the color of rot. A single strand of cloth, red, frayed, possibly from a child's scarf, fluttered from a splintered corner of the third-floor window. No one claimed it. No one touched it. The town tried to move on, but some things refused to be buried. The friend who survived that night, the boy who saw Jamie vanish, never spoke her name again. His parents moved away in silence like mourners at a funeral where no body had been laid to rest. But years later, long after he'd been committed, a staff member at Black Ridge Valley Psychiatric found something scratched into the wall behind his bed. A crude map, circles, arrows, a phrase again and again in jagged pencil. "There's another room below the room." At first, this was dismissed as nonsense, but to a local archivist, Miriam Lane, it meant something. She had once cataloged a stack of building plans from the school's original architect. Most were damaged or faded, but a particular blueprint from 1926 showed an odd space beneath room 3C. A square with no entrance, no mention, no access point. Just 4 walls beneath the foundation. A room without a door. Miriam, driven by the kind of obsession that only small-town librarians seem to carry, began her own investigation. She visited the abandoned school on November 12, 2009, equipped with a flashlight, a notebook, and a small hammer. She left a voicemail that night on her brother's answering machine at 11:17 p.m. "I found something in the east stairwell. The wall's hollow. It's not concrete. It's wood behind plaster. I think there's a space." That was the last time anyone heard from Miriam Lane. Her car was found parked crooked beside the curb. The flashlight was recovered in the grass, still lit, battery drained to nothing. Her notebook was missing, until 6 weeks later, when it arrived by mail to her brother's house, wrapped in butcher paper. No return address, postmarked from a town 800 miles away. Inside were sketches of the room she believed existed, along with a final page that simply read, 17 steps, 17 marks, the wood breathes. Her brother burned the notebook that night. His own children had started speaking in their sleep, saying names they couldn't have known. Names of the vanished. Meanwhile, more people began reporting strange phenomena in Blackridge. The sound of a bell echoing through the woods near dusk. Shadows seen in windows of the condemned school, especially around the time the sun dipped below the trees. One man, a retired janitor named Carl Eder, claimed he saw lights in the basement when he passed by one night. He swore he heard music, a faint piano melody, twinkling, childish. He was found the next morning collapsed in his living room, mouth full of blood, his ears stuffed with notebook paper. On that paper he had scribbled, "If you hear the bell, do not answer it." Somewhere in the middle of all this, Ellis Mercer returned. Not publicly, not with warning. But according to property records, a man matching his age and old photograph bought a cabin 20 minutes outside Blackridge under a false name. He paid in cash, never used electricity, had no phone. The only reason anyone discovered it was because a hunter wandered off trail one October and stumbled across the property. There were no signs of life except for one, a small metal box sitting on a tree stump. Inside it, wrapped in black cloth, was a child's drawing, crude, smudged, soaked with old water stains. It showed a school desk, a crooked bell, and 17 pairs of eyes, all bleeding red. On the back, someone had written, "I didn't stay behind. I was left." The hunter never reported it. Not then. Not until years later, when his own son disappeared from a birthday party near Blackridge's northern woods. Only then did he speak. By then it was too late. The cycle had begun again. The bell rings not by accident. It is a signal, a call, a tally mark, and always, always, it rings twice. The second ring is not to call them, it's to seal them in. Ellis Mercer's reappearance was never confirmed by the authorities, but the story spread quickly. The man in the woods, the cabin with no chimney, the sound of a bell echoing through the pines. Locals whispered of seeing a figure moving between the trees just before sundown, always walking in the same direction, never looking up. The few who got close described the same unsettling detail. He carried a school bell in his hand, but it never rang. It swayed gently with each step, as if holding its breath. The town tried to forget again. That's what Blackridge had always done. Bury, silence, move on. But things do not like to be buried. The school stood like a broken tombstone at the edge of memory, and the soil beneath it had begun to stir. In October 2013, construction crews arrived to finally demolish what remained of Blackridge Elementary. The town council claimed it was for safety reasons, old asbestos, risk of collapse. But others believed they were trying to erase something. Bulldozers rolled in under gray skies. The first strike into the foundation sent a sound through the air no one could explain. Not concrete, not wood, but something that groaned and echoed back. The machine stopped immediately, and then all power in the area failed. Phones, radios, every engine, dead, for 17 minutes. And when the workers returned to their vehicles, they found every windshield cracked in the exact same pattern, a ring like a bell's rim with a hollow center. The town blamed sabotage, vandals, ghost hunters, but no arrests were made. The school wasn't torn down. The crews left and didn't return. And for the first time since 1997, the front doors of the school were found unlocked. No sign of break-in, no damage, just open. The lock, rusted shut for years, clicked perfectly, as if someone had oiled it from inside. A local journalist named Anya Riddell decided to investigate. She ran a blog called Hollow Truths and specialized in forgotten mysteries. She live-streamed her entry into the school to 1,122 viewers. Only the first 17 minutes of the stream survived. In it, she walks through the front hall. Her flashlight flickers twice. Graffiti lines the walls, except room 3C, which is untouched. Perfectly clean. The door, still bearing Mrs. Calder's nameplate, opens without a sound. Inside, all 18 desks remain, in perfect rows, covered in dust, except one. The front left desk is spotless. There is a child's drawing on it. 17 small stick figures, a black shape above them. One figure standing apart from the rest. And a bell. Anya whispers, "This wasn't here last year." The stream cuts. Authorities found her phone on the front steps. The battery had exploded. Her shoes were sitting beside it, neatly placed side by side. She has not been seen since. Hollow Truths was deleted. Her entire blog archive vanished within 24 hours. Around the same time, a new phenomenon began to ripple through online forums. People reported dreams of rooms they'd never been in. Old desks, distant ringing, hallways that looped. A figure always stood at the end of the corridor, holding something heavy in one hand. In every dream, that figure took one step closer before waking. The subreddit, r Blackridge Theory, ballooned overnight. Thousands of accounts, shared sketches, shared words. Many users had never heard of the town before. Some were children. One 8-year-old from Maine drew a map of room 3C, down to the placement of the chalkboard and the scuff marks on the floor. His mother claimed he'd never been to Pennsylvania. When asked how he knew, he said, "I sat there before." He pointed to the desk in the corner, the same one Ellis Mercer once used. When shown a photo of Ellis, the boy cried. Not in fear, but recognition. "That's the one who didn't go with us," he whispered. He stayed behind so he could open it later. The boy from Maine wasn't the last. Over the next 3 months, 23 more children across 6 countries began referencing the bell room. Teachers reported them staring blankly at walls during class. Some began drawing circles. Others hummed a melody that couldn't be identified. Slow, repetitive, almost like a lullaby played backward. Psychiatric specialists were brought in. Hypnosis was tried. But none of the children gave answers that made sense, except one girl from Warsaw, age 9. She spoke fluent English during her sleep study, despite never having studied the language. Her voice, recorded on a loop, said, "We hear it because someone opened it. The bell calls when it remembers what it lost." After she woke, she couldn't speak at all for 3 days. Her first words were written on the mirror in red crayon. "We are not in the walls. We are the walls." By now, Ellis Mercer had vanished again. The cabin was found burned down, foundation cold to the touch but with no sign of fire damage to the surrounding woods. Inside the ashes, searchers found one item that hadn't turned to cinder, a brass key. It had the number 17 carved into it. Experts confirmed it was the same key model used for Blackridge Elementary classroom doors in the 90s, but it was in pristine condition. No soot, no heat warp, untouched. No one claimed the key. It was stored by local authorities, but weeks later it vanished from evidence. The logbook says it was checked out by C. Mercer. There is no C. Mercer in the records. There never was. By the winter of 2014, a quiet government file was reopened under Project Bellwether, a Cold War-era psychological threat response protocol that tracked mass dream phenomena tied to classified locations. Blackridge had once been included, then dismissed. Now it returned to the top of the list. A quiet team was deployed. Not military, not FBI. Something older. 3 unmarked vans entered town on January 3rd. One local said they saw the same man from the woods, Ellis, standing across the street when the vans parked. But when they looked again, he was gone. The team entered the school at dawn. What happened inside has never been released, but the vans left that same night with their headlights off. One of the men was seen vomiting in the alley behind the gas station. A clerk overheard him muttering, "There were names on the ceiling, names that bled when you read them." The clerk quit the next day, moved out of town, never returned. And then, for 6 months, nothing. Absolute stillness. No sightings, no dreams, no whispers. Until one morning in June when every phone in Blackridge received the same anonymous text. No number, no signal trace, just one phrase. 17 bells, one forgotten. No one could explain how the message reached every phone, not just in Blackridge but across 3 neighboring counties. Landlines rang once and stopped. Old radios tuned to dead stations crackled to life and played a sound like metal dragging over stone. Several elderly residents reported bleeding from their ears. The local priest, Father Mallory, delivered a sermon that Sunday where he begged his congregation to avoid the school at all costs. He said a door had opened that should have remained sealed. The next day, he was found unconscious at the altar, both palms pressed against his ears, whispering something in Latin. The paramedics said he wasn't injured, just empty, like his body had forgotten what sound meant. That same week, an online forum for obscure urban legends had a user post under the name Mercer Returns. The post was simple. It read, "Ask about room 17. Ask about the floor that doesn't exist." The moderators removed the post, but not before others responded. One claimed to be a contractor hired to work on Black Ridge's renovation in 2003. He swore there was a sublevel on the blueprints not listed in the county records. A concrete shaft descending 3 stories below the lowest basement. No access point. No elevator. Just a note. Never open. Another user, from Japan, uploaded a photo of their school's fire escape plan. At the bottom, scribbled in faded ink, was the same phrase. 17 bells. One forgotten. They'd never heard of Black Ridge. That July, a former student named Kira Lint, age 29, posted a video from her childhood home in Minnesota. She had been in Ms. Halberd's class in 1997. In the video, she appears visibly shaken, her eyes darting to corners of the room mid-sentence. She says she's been hearing a bell at exactly 3:17 a.m. for 18 consecutive nights. She holds up a drawing from a box labeled Black Ridge, age 6. The crayon sketch shows a long hallway with doors on both sides, but where the walls should be, there are faces. Not drawn in childish curves, but hollow, adult expressions. Dozens of them, mouths open. A caption beneath it reads, "We have no shadows here." Kira ends the video by saying she'll go back to the school no matter what. That was her final upload. 2 days later, her car was found parked near the school. Driver's door open. Engine cold. Inside was a camcorder, still recording. The footage cuts in and out. But at one point, Kira stands before the main entrance and whispers, "There's a 13th chime." Her voice deepens unnaturally. It doesn't end at 12. A shape passes behind her in the glass, too fast to identify. The camera falls. A loud bell tolls once, off-key. Then silence. Her body was never recovered. That autumn, the town council quietly removed Black Ridge Elementary from official listings. On paper, it no longer existed. Satellite images of the block showed an empty lot, but residents insisted they still saw the building, gray bricks, shattered windows, and that rusted bell frozen in the tower. Even stranger, delivery trucks reported GPS routes redirecting them around the block, as if the software itself refused to recognize it. One night in late October, a group of high schoolers filmed a haunted school challenge and attempted to enter. Their live stream glitched as they approached the iron gates. The video went static, then returned for only 3 seconds. Just enough to see one of them, Nico Harland, standing in a dark corridor, his mouth moving rapidly but without sound, as if the air had been stolen. Behind him, the shadows pulsed like they were breathing. Then the screen went black. Only Nico returned. His hair had turned white. He spoke in backward sentences for weeks, drawing intricate bell shapes in the dirt with his fingers. When asked about the others, he only said, "The bell keeps what it rings." His parents moved him away, but the town remembered. The footage vanished from all devices. Even saved copies became corrupted. Those who tried to re-upload found the files renamed to the same phrase, "Do not toll again." Around this time, reports surfaced of a man seen outside the school every Thursday at sunset. He wore an old Black Ridge staff badge, name Walter Finch, but Walter Finch had died in 1982. Local librarian Clara Jensen found a file labeled Bell Archive Restricted Use deep in the town's microfilm vault. It had no barcode. The pages inside were brittle, scorched around the edges. They described a ritual conducted in 1917 to seal a harmonic anomaly beneath what would become the school. The notes detailed frequency containment via architectural masking, which seemed to mean the school itself was designed to muffle something below. One entry read, "The 13th frequency is not sound, but invitation. It does not ring through the ear, but through the mind." Clara was last seen walking toward the school steps one foggy morning. Her shoes were found by the entrance, still warm. Since then, dozens have reported hearing a child's voice whispering from their closets. "We rang it wrong." These aren't hallucinations. A retired police chief tried recording the whispers on an analog cassette. The tape played back an exact phrase: "Your silence will not save you. Sound will come." What made it worse? The whisper was his daughter's voice. She had died at Black Ridge in 1991. Investigators from out of town visited. None stayed longer than a day. One left a single typed note in their motel drawer. "I saw the rope move. The bell swung without wind, and it was looking at me." There was a janitor named Miles who worked at Black Ridge for 20 years. Quiet, unnoticed, faithful. He cleaned classrooms after hours and never spoke of what he saw. But in 2005, a week before he vanished, he walked into the Black Ridge diner, holding a yellow notepad. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He ordered coffee, sat in a booth, and wrote the same sentence over and over. "There were more desks today than yesterday." He whispered something to the waitress. She remembered it clearly. He said, "I mop up footsteps that aren't mine. They lead to the attic, but we never had one." The waitress laughed, thinking it was a joke, until Miles grabbed her hand and showed her his fingers. Bloody, raw, the skin rubbed off his fingertips. "It's not ink," he said. "It's from ringing." The next day, Miles was gone. His keys were found hanging from the rope in the bell tower. A wax figure stood in his place in the janitor's closet, eerily lifelike, but when touched it collapsed into dust. Years later, when the town demolished the outer fence, workers found a sealed door in the dirt. No hinges, no handle, just brick. They brought drills and torches, but none worked. One man tried dynamite. The explosion ruptured his eardrums, but the door didn't budge. Instead, everyone within 100 feet began bleeding from their noses. No one tried again. Then came the fires, spontaneous, unexplained. Not flames that consumed, but smoke that spread from nowhere. Black, syrupy fog that oozed from drains and keyholes near the school's old grounds. People began seeing children standing in the smoke, silent silhouettes holding hands, faces pale, mouths slightly open, never blinking. One mother reported her 8-year-old son disappearing during a fog burst. She searched for hours, screaming his name. When the fog cleared, he was standing in the exact spot she'd lost him, but he was older, 12, maybe 13. He didn't speak for days. When he did, he asked why his mother's eyes were the wrong color. She hadn't changed, but he insisted. Said her eyes used to be the same gray as the rope. And then he wept, not like a child, but like something ancient. In 2013, a new teacher named Mrs. Halloway was assigned to the rebuilt wing of Black Ridge Elementary. She was bright, kind, loved by her students. Her classroom sat just adjacent to where the original bell tower once stood. One day she noticed a strange sound beneath her desk, a faint ticking like a clock with no hands. She thought it was electrical. Maintenance found nothing. Then came the drawings. Her students began handing in art projects. Each one featured a tall, dark figure with twisted arms and hollow eyes, standing beside a burning schoolhouse. Some labeled it the principal, but Black Ridge hadn't had a principal since 1998. Not officially. The files from that era were sealed. That week, Mrs. Halloway found something slipped into her purse, a Polaroid photo. It showed her standing at the blackboard, but she wasn't wearing the same clothes. Her expression was twisted, eyes wide with fear, mouth smeared with ash. She didn't remember posing for it. She asked the class who took it. None of them had a camera. One student whispered, "He did." When she asked who, the girl pointed to the coat rack, but nothing was there. Later that night, janitorial staff reported hearing footsteps running through the empty halls. They followed the sound to Mrs. Halloway's room. It was locked, Lights off. But from inside came a slow, rhythmic knocking. Exactly 3 beats, pause, then 3 more, over and over. They broke open the door. No one inside, nothing disturbed. But written across the chalkboard were the words, "She saw the bell swing." The next morning, Mrs. Halloway was found sitting in her car in the parking lot, hands gripped to the steering wheel, eyes fixed forward. She didn't blink, didn't move. She was alive, but couldn't speak, just rocked slightly back and forth. She remained that way for 72 hours. When she finally spoke, all she said was, "Don't answer roll call after dark." She never returned to teaching. The children in her class were relocated. Over the next few months, 5 of them began reporting strange dreams, each one different but always involving a rope, a song, and a boy without a face. One boy woke up with burn marks, shaped like numbers across his chest, 13 to 17. Another girl stopped sleeping entirely, terrified of a bell she claimed was growing louder in her closet each night. Her parents checked. No bell. Until one evening it rang, and the closet door opened by itself. In early 2014, a local reporter named Cynthia Graves began digging into the rumors surrounding Black Ridge Elementary. She was known for chasing down cold cases, especially ones dismissed as folklore. What she found buried in public records chilled her. Black Ridge's original schoolhouse burned down not in 1998 as commonly believed, but in 1956. Newspaper archives told a forgotten story. A fire started in the bell tower during an unsanctioned after-school detention run by Principal Morton. A man later declared missing. 4 children were never accounted for. The building was rebuilt, renamed, records altered. A cover-up. Cynthia managed to interview one of the surviving students, now an elderly man in a care home. He refused to speak of the school directly, but muttered often about the bell tolling for the ones who lied. He claimed the bell never rang to mark time. It rang to mark who wouldn't make it out. That night, Cynthia reviewed the tapes of the interview. In the background, faintly, a bell chimed 13 times. She hadn't heard it in person. She cross-referenced her footage with audio software. It was real. The frequency didn't match any standard bell. She called the station. They never aired the story. The next morning, Cynthia's apartment door was found wide open. No sign of struggle. Only a single chalkboard eraser placed in the center of her bed. It smelled like smoke and iron. Her car was still parked outside, her wallet still inside. Police marked it as a disappearance. But something darker swirled beneath the surface. Her editor received an envelope a week later, no return address. Inside was a flash drive. On it, just one file, 13bells.mp4. The video showed footage of a school hallway, empty, dimly lit. But down the corridor stood a tall figure in a principal's uniform, with a featureless face, slowly turning its head side to side. With each motion, a bell rang, louder and louder, until the screen went black. At the very end, in white text, "Attendance taken." The station burned down 2 days later in an electrical fire. The footage was lost. Only the envelope remained. A janitor later reported hearing voices whispering roll call names while cleaning the remains, but no one was there. In the months that followed, Black Ridge Elementary underwent another renovation. The bell tower was removed entirely, but during construction, workers found something beneath the foundation, a sealed trapdoor. Police were called. They pried it open. A staircase descended into complete darkness. The staircase beneath Black Ridge Elementary led to a corridor carved directly into stone, older than the school itself. The walls were lined with hooks and lanterns that hadn't been lit in decades. Carved into the stone were dozens of names, some matching the missing students from both 1956 and 1998. The air was thick, choking, filled with a scent of chalk dust and decay. At the far end of the passage, investigators found a small room filled with scorched desks, melted school supplies, and a massive rusted bell suspended from thick chains. There were burn marks across the floor in the shape of footprints circling the bell, as if something had paced endlessly around it. At the base of the bell was a mound of what appeared to be children's shoes, charred, fused together. When one officer stepped near it, the bell rang on its own. 13 times. Their body camera captured the sound. The officer began speaking to someone no one else could see, calling out names in a trembling voice, matching some carved into the wall. Then they screamed and collapsed, their mouth filled with chalk dust. They survived, but never spoke again. Their hair turned white within the week. News of the discovery never reached the public. The entire incident was classified under a school safety protocol. A fence was erected around the area, then quietly removed months later. But those who lived in Blackridge knew something was wrong. The children complained of nightmares, of being trapped in burning classrooms, forced to recite names under threat of being erased. Parents reported hearing footsteps running down empty halls at night, followed by the dragging sound of a chalkboard. And always, always the sound of the bell. 13 rings, never less, never more. The school was shut down indefinitely, but the building was never demolished. Rumors claim the bell was too heavy to move, that when cranes tried to lift it, the chains bled. Others believe the bell is not just an object, but a gate, a tether to something that was sealed long ago, and that Blackridge was built atop it to contain what lies beneath. The missing were never found. No bodies, no evidence, just names carved in cold stone, echoing in the silence. You've been listening to Sanctified Secrets. If you feel a chill, if your lights flickered, or if you heard the sound of a bell when there shouldn't be one, you're not alone. There are places still buried beneath our cities, whispers beneath classrooms, names carved in stone no one dares speak aloud. If you want to hear more truths they tried to erase, subscribe and step deeper into the dark, because the secrets don't sleep, and neither should you.